So now we want to look at how we can transform our path-based selections. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and start with our path-based selection tools. We'll use the oval selection first. Go ahead and click and drag out, and then maybe hold down Shift to add to that. Maybe use our rectangular selection and use Alt to cut away from that. Maybe use our freehand lasso and hold down Shift to add to that. And maybe we'll use our polygonal and hold down Alt to cut away. Double click to close that. And now let's say that we want to edit this using our various different vector-based tools. So what we can do here is we can go to Select, Convert to Shape. Now that's a shape, we can come over here with our shape selection tools, and we can begin to select different parts of this and move them around like so. So I'm just going to go ahead and there we go. Maybe click and drag like so. Come in here, choose our Convert Point tool, and maybe do something like so. And now that we're done with that, we could do something like maybe say minus a point. So maybe I don't like that point there, and maybe I don't like that point there. And maybe I want to convert this point to something like so. So now that we've got that, let's just go ahead and go to Shapes and Convert to Selection. And now we're back in our selection. So we've just converted from a path-based selection to a shape and then back to a path-based selection. So now that we're in our path-based selection, we can come over here to our selection adjuster tool, and you can see if we come up here and we move this that we do have the same types of tools that we have when we're transforming our paths and we're transforming our text with these little handles. And the idea basically is the same. If we go ahead and click and drag, we can use the corner to scale, we can use the sides to scale around the opposite point. If we're holding down Control, we can rotate if we're on a corner. If we're holding down Control, we can skew if we're on one of the center points. And we can get a transformation like that. Now, let me go ahead and undo those. There we go. If we want to use our transform tools though, we want to go ahead and hit Shift T, like so. And now you can see that we have some advantages. Not only do we have the corner points, which we had with our selection adjuster tool, but we also now have the reference point. And the reference point really gives us a whole new world because now we can work around this reference point. So to begin with, if we go to Scale, if we just go ahead and click and drag like so, and then we add Alt, now we're scaling around that reference point. And that can be really useful. And if we're holding down Shift, we can scale around that reference point while constraining the aspect ratio. But we can also do something like Control when we're on a corner to rotate around that reference point. And that can be really powerful. We can also use that Control to skew, and if we're holding down Shift, we can skew and keep the aspect ratio, and if we're holding down Alt, we can skew, hold down and keep the aspect ratio and skew around our reference point. So you can see that by using our modifier keys, we can do a lot more with our transformational bounding box tools and using our reference point here with the transform tool than we can do with our selection adjuster tool. Now, of course, if we don't like a transformation, we can click Cancel Transformation. And if we do like the transformation, we can click Commit Transformation. Now, I do want you to notice that we're not actually switching off of any of these tools. We were able to scale that, rotate it, and skew it without using these specific tools. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Commit Transformation, and that transformation has now been committed. So you can see that that transformational tool is much more powerful for working with selections than our selection adjuster. Now, why would you choose to use the selection adjuster versus using the transform tool? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D to deselect this. I'm going to create a new layer, and then I'm going to go with our chalk tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and scrub in some red color chalk here, something a little more colorful than our last look at the chalk tool. So now I'm going to go ahead and just come over here and create some more path-based selections like so. So I'll just do something a little different this time, kind of trying to get something interesting going on. So if we go and we do our selection adjuster like so, you'll see that we can just go in there and do like we did before. So I can just modify that. If I hold down Control like so, I can rotate. Oh, kind of slipped off that. Control and rotate that like so. And you can see that this does not modify our underlying pixels at all. However, if we use our transform tool by holding down Shift T to access that, and we begin to modify this, and I'll just move our reference point out something like so. And let's say we want to do that rotate, so hold down Control and rotate around that. Now notice that the transform tool is actually moving pixels on that layer. So the main difference as far as moving and working with these transformations is if you're working over pixels that can be changed, you're going to want to use the selection adjuster tool if you don't want to change the pixels. However, if you do want to change the pixels, then you will use the transform tool. If I go ahead and say commit transformation, now our transformation has been committed. We still have that selection, we can work with it. And of course, if we use our layer adjuster tool, we can move that around. Now notice that we are getting some artifacting because of the anti-aliasing.